You're watching WSTV Digital Media.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome you to the September 8, 2016 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston-Salem TV Digital Media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items which petitioner has requested withdrawal or continuance, or items where staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up in opposition. For our public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks a question. For general use district zoning, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. Petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use zoning, however, you must be very specific about the uses and how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of our agenda require approval by either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today or recommendations will go to those bodies for their consideration. If you are addressing the board today, before you begin your remarks, please give us your name, address, and zip code for the record. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the August 11, 22, and 25 meetings. Any additions, corrections?
Move for approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Mulligan, second, Mr. Lamb. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now I call on Aaron King for our consent agenda.
All right. First item is B1, zoning docket W3304. This is a request by St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church to rezone, for this portion of it, about 4 acres from RS9 to IP, institutional and public. So you can see the portion that we're talking about now. It's in yellow. It's on the north side of Old Hollow Road at the corner of Phelps Circle. You can see the zoning pattern there. Basically to the west and to the south is RS9. There's a nursing care institution there that's zoned IPS, kind of southeast of the site. And then to the north, it's RS30 zoning, again, still residential single-family homes. As I mentioned, this request is for IP zoning. When our staff reviewed this, it is consistent with the recommendations of the area plan, and staff would recommend approval of IP zoning for the portion for 3304.
Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? So no one will declare the public hearing closed.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Mulligan, second, Mr. Lamb. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, item B2 is the remainder of that request. It's F1560, and it is actually the portion there that's in pink. It's in the county's jurisdiction, so it is a separate request. Again, that would be from RS30 to IP, institutional and public. The area plan does recommend institutional zoning for this portion of the site as well, so staff would recommend approval of F1560 for IP zoning.
Again, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Said no one, declared the public hearing closed.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion by Mr. Mulligan, second Mr. Lamb. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that. Next item on your agenda is zoning docket F-1561. And the petitioner is Thelma Nide and the Nide Family, LLC. The property is .77 acre located on the east side of Peters Creek Parkway, south of Fishel Road. And the request is a general use rezoning request from RS9 to GB General Business. This is the Legacy's Growth Management Plan. You can see it's located just along the Davidson County line, just north of that, along Peters Creek Parkway, which is a growth corridor, and the Growth Management Area 3 suburban neighborhoods. This is a zoning map showing the subject property there, highlighted in yellow. There's a small non-residential building located on the property there that has historically been used as a beauty salon and has no longer been classified as a non-conforming use. It has been vacated for several years. It's kind of on the northern edge of some commercial zoning, again in the southern part of the county along Peters Creek Parkway. To the north you have single-family residential homes and zoning, and to the south you have multifamily zoning that was approved earlier this year, RM18S. Across Peters Creek Parkway you have some highway business special use zoning, and further down towards the county line some special use and special use limited highway business zoning. So you can see it's kind of in a transitional area there along the northern edge of this non-residential use. And again, the other commercial zonings in that area have been either special use or special use limited, and this is a general use request. Aerial photographs showing the subject property. And the South Suburban Area Plan, which was adopted in 2011, at that time it did recommend commercial zoning for this property, as well as the property directly to the south. However, as I said earlier this year, that property directly to the south was rezoned for multifamily use. This plan is actually going to be updated in the next calendar year, and so this is one of the things that we will look at as far as changing conditions in a revised area plan. Look at recent rezonings in that area and the development pattern, and so that particular use recommendation may or may not be reevaluated at that time. But that's the current area plan. This is subject property there. It's looking south on Peters Creek Parkway. The subject property is to the left. Then looking across Peters Creek Parkway, the existing entrance there into the subject property. And then from the subject property looking north on Peters Creek Parkway. In the background to the left, you'll see some more new multifamily, the Rockwood development that was approved a couple of years ago behind the fire department, which has been constructed. And this is just an image of the site plan that was approved earlier this year that I mentioned. So the subject property is directly to the north of this. I think it's about 166 multifamily units, which was approved, has certainly obviously not been constructed. So it does show some buildings there about 25 feet off the property line from where the subject request is proposed, as well as the playground area there. Again, the 2011 area plan does recommend commercial land use for the site. The site is adjacent to residential zonings on two sides. And the GB district is an intense commercial district which allows for a wider array of uses. Certainly this site is somewhat limited by its size, but car sales, car repair, convenience store, other uses similar to that are allowed on within the proposed request. And the other commercial rezonings in this area, as I've mentioned, have either been special use zoning or special use limited zoning, and this is a general use request. And so staff's recommendation is for denial, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Is there a side yard requirement in GB?
I'm sorry?
Is there a side yard requirement in GB zoning?
And adjacent to residential zoning, you have to have a 40-foot building setback.
Setback from the main street, but also from where you touch residential?
There's no setback on the front, so they could pull the building right up to Peters Creek Parkway right away, but any new buildings adjacent to residential zoning has to be set back 40 feet, yes.
Any other questions of staff at this time?
Yeah, could you show that picture again? I just want to see where that playground was relative to the boundary.
It is this dark area
Right, I see it
Do you
now.
see that right there?
Yeah.
Yes, this is the clubhouse here, one of the multifamily buildings, and the other multifamily, that's the playground, excuse me, yeah.
Any other questions of staff?
This is a triangle. If I remember looking at that site, it's about equidistance on so it's equilateral triangle. What's
that's-
each side?
255.
255?
244, and
Okay.
258.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Almost.
Yeah.
First.
Also, I'll mention that we did receive a letter today from the property owners directly to the south, and that you have that at your desk there in opposition to the request.
Have we had any contact from the residential, the two residences that are to the north of that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Was there a meeting held?
Two nice houses here.
Forgive me, I don't have the agenda book right in front of me. Aaron, do you see that one? I don't.
I think we've just got an email. It's attachment C in your book. I think the petitioner tried to contact the owner or the developer of the apartments to the south.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's attachment C. It looks like there was some outreach there.
And the property owner petitioner is not here, but the proposed purchaser is here to speak for the request.
Did this property owner speak out against the multifamily
The property owner to,
when that was being rezoned?
I
Is there-
can check. I've got the docket here.
Okay.
I don't remember there
I
being any
don't
opposition.
remember.
I don't think there was any
It
opposition.
was back in
I don't think
April,
it
I
was.
believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions now, or do you want to have
let's
have the
go.
hearing? And okay. Thank you, Gary. Mr. Kelly?
My name's Mark Edward Kelly. I live at 418 Yakin Valley in Advance, North Carolina. I do own this property. This property was purchased recently. The building that is there was in use. It was prior a beauty salon, and it was a rental property, and it was in a very bad situation. They found some people there OD'd. It was drug infested, in other words. And so I bought the property because I owned the car wash down the street and have for 14 years, and removed everything from there and had the property cleaned up. I did reach out to the property to the north, to the Fisher family. I spoke to both properties. Both were in agreement. They were happy that the property was going to cleaned up. I told them what the use was, which I own a consumer finance leasing company and a Frontier Trailers and Sheds. And I do all the leasing for all your buildings. Not buildings, I don't do buildings anymore, but all your trailers, everything from NASCAR trailers down to landscape trailers. With the lease program after 2008, we've put over 400 some people in business for themselves. And so we've kind of prided on that. We built it up in advance, and now we wanted to move it down closer to our other business for convenience also, so I wouldn't have to deal with this piece of property that was in such derelict conditions. There's not a lot you can do with the property, so I decided to buy it, and if by chance the properties to the south or to the north would sell to me, over time maybe I'd possibly purchase it. I have met with those individuals. They are in agreement to sell me the properties. We're working out those terms at this time. But other than that, I'm not going to change the property in any other way. I'm just going to clean up the building and make it a little office and pave the entrance and the facility and put some trailers on it and continue to do my leasing. That's the goal.
Okay, but we need to quit talking about specific uses. You've asked for general use. You asked for a wide variety of uses.
Yeah, I came to their office and they said I could do a general what's it called? And they said I could bring the paperwork with me today, but apparently it's already been deemed general business. There's been a lot of confusion from the get-go between the office and us, because we came to them before we even purchased the property and talked to them about what would be in our best interest, and then that all of a sudden changed. But that's okay. The property's I'm still happy to have the property. It's still cleaned up, and there's not drugs on the property anymore, so.
Just a clarification.
Which is an their advantage, who owns the property beside me.
The speaker's representative, Tony Hendricks, the realtor, did come down to our office. We went over with him what the area plan recommended. We did not state that we would support that necessarily. We told him what the area plan recommended. We explained to him the difference between general use, special use limited, and special use zoning. The petitioner chose to go general use zoning. And we told him, though, however, if there became some issues with general use zoning, that he could convert during the process to a special use limited request.
Okay. So I still can do that?
Yes.
And start eliminating a bunch of uses then, I guess.
I don't have any problem with that.
So tell us then what use you want.
What I was
Just
seeking
one use?
was was outdoor display and retail. I went upstairs, and that's what they said I fall under.
Is that the use he needs to?
Yes.
Okay.
And the rest of them, I mean, I hate to eliminate myself for future in case I buy those properties, but anything to do with sex or things of that nature would definitely be, or gas stations or things that have to do with petroleum or oil or anything of that nature, I would be willing to get rid of.
Well, staff in a position of responding to the change of uses here on the fly, and I don't know what staff's position would be on that one use. Is that an unfair question?
Yeah.
I think staff would still have a concern with the limited use zoning that I think given the care that was taken with the site immediately to the south and with some of the other zoning in that area, we would, at least staff would still believe a site plan would be necessary to get our support, and then we would have to carefully look at the site plan to see how that related to what's going to be there. So I don't think we could, staff-wise at least, recommend approval of just a limited use zoning.
Are you willing to continue this for a month or two to get a site plan to bring to staff to try to get their support?
Sure. I mean, if that's what's necessary, I don't have a problem with that. I think the reason we were told to go with GB is because we didn't have to do a site plan. So, I mean, it was based on, the conversation with them is why we went, and I spent the $1,000, and now that doesn't seem to be what I was supposed to. It's very confusing to me. It seems like I got mixed from everybody, my person and that office too, because they laid out the plan and they said, well, this is perfect because you've been, this has already been highway business desired. So you fall right in the perfect thing. We made our decision based on that, so that's the only reason we went with GB. Otherwise, we would have come in here with the proper,
Yeah, it's more than just the filing fees. You're going to have to pay a site, someone to prepare a site. And we have made some concessions in the past on some fees. I mean, is there anything we can do to help them if he were to switch to special use?
I think typically what we've done is if they go from general use to special use, we would charge the increment in what that difference would be. But again, I don't think staff ever gave, you can confirm, but staff ever gave any hint that we would, at least staff would be recommending approval. But as everyone knows, a petitioner is totally free to propose whatever rezoning they wish, with or without the staff indicating that they would support it or not. So the petitioner is always free to propose what they want.
That's correct. And David Reed, who is not here, was the person that talked with the realtor initially, and he clearly explained the differences, and the realtor said the petitioner wanted to go with general use rezoning. And we would, if we wanted to switch to special use limited rezoning, that's something that could theoretically happen in this process without delaying a month or possibly 2 months if we want to go special use zoning for a new site plan. But we would have to have a revised application signed by the property owner. But if it's converted to special use limited zoning, because the filing deadline with site plans is Monday, we're probably looking at a 2-month delay. Special use. Excuse me.
But do you understand what?
I do understand. I mean, there's nothing else I can do, right?
Well, I mean, you can take your chances here today. Okay.
Well, it's better to have the support of your community if you're going to do something.
Yeah, and as they pointed out, there's no assurance that they're going to support that. But
And
you know,
that's true.
but to come back with a site plan, given the fact that there's opposition, you know, it's going to cost you a little money to do that. And so the decision is whether you want to do that or we can switch it to a limited use today, eliminate all the uses except the outdoor display retail, but that still doesn't give staff an
Yeah, I
opportunity to look
wouldn't
at a
want
site
to do
plan.
that. I wouldn't want to eliminate that much.
Okay. So-
And I would say at that point, I would switch to the limited, and I would choose the things that. and
Switch
then I
to
would-
special use, that
Yeah,
way you bring
and
back
then
a
I
site
would-
plan
Right, I'll bring that site plan, and then I'd take my chances.
and a
with the other
shorter
one,
list of uses.
And then take my chances to the next level.
Okay.
That's all you can really do at that point.
What you, how the board feels about this?
I agree with that. I think that he's better. He's better to wait because he's going to, you know, not to say the staff's going to do anything, but he has more support. And what I keep thinking is this next step, you know, the commissioners or whatever, they're going to look at it real, you know, they have the final say. So I feel like if you do exactly what you feel like you need to do, but it may take too much to do it, you know. So I would make a motion that we
We still haven't finished the public hearing yet because there's
Right.
somebody who wants to.
Sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, did you have anything else that you'd like to?
I was just I was curious to know if they don't own the property yet, they just submitted for rezoning, and I own my property and I've submitted for a particular zoning. Wouldn't someone who owns their property have preference over someone who doesn't even own their land yet?
I'm not sure I follow. But you say you own the property now, right?
I'm saying the apartment complex. They might not get financed. You never know. So I'm betting on seems like if they got financed, then I understand. But if they don't get financed, I went through this and got blocked for something that they might not even get. So it seems like the cart is in front of the horse instead of. Does that make sense?
I don't
Carol?
think staff's recommendation is based on the apartment complex. They're just based on the appropriateness of this.
Okay.
So yeah.
My mind's racing because I'm learning.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, is there anything else that you would like to say? Right, okay, I think we know what we'll go ahead and finish the public hearing. We'll come back to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, does anyone else like to speak in support of this? Then we'll turn to the opposition. Mr. Gupton?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Harris Gupton with Gupton Webb Engineers, and I represent Ms. Hartman, who is the current landowner, and Ms. Tracy Dudenberg, who is the developer of the apartments. And I do all of them's engineering work and did the design of the apartment project, and I was asked to come to speak on their behalf on the thing. I understand the gentleman's request and, a little bit confusion there, but realistically, we have spent a lot of time and effort and money, and we are in the process now of actually designing the final site plans, road and water and sewer and everything in. The project is going forward. It is funded. It is going to be built. And this is a project that it is designed for working families and children on the thing. That's the whole purpose that this program, that this project was approved under, is to create where they can get a market-built, market-value apartment with a slightly less rent because of some tax credit situations on the thing. So that gives them a chance to move into something that's equal to anything you can rent in town on the thing, basically, on that, with a little bit less rent to give them a little bit more foothold in growing in the world and being able to grow. And also, when they move into this apartment, if they do advance, they do not have to move out. There's their income can go up and stuff. So it gives an opportunity for struggling families to get a nice place to live and raise their children in a nice habitat. We do have a nice clubhouse. The clubhouse for these facilities, I have designed many of them all over the state of North Carolina for them for over 20 years for this company and for others. to have a general business zoning right in, we have a building that backs up to the edge of this property on there that is multi-level. And, with no design of what's there, general use, there's so many things to go in there. There's no proposed of what they would do with the buffer to try to make something more pleasant or whatever, But realistically, it's just inappropriate in my opinion, and I've been to a lot of zoning cases, as some of you know me from way back, so I've been around a few years, so I think that to just shoot for a general business zone at this nature, it would be defeating the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. This, when we were doing the apartment project, there's a daycare right next door to it, and we worked with them to put some speed humps in the road that was coming in so we can slow traffic down, because they were concerned about children and stuff there. And to go in and put business that will have stuff, kids are attracted to things like trailers and whatever on the thing to climb on and whatever. And I think there needs to be more thought put into it before you ask for something like this, and on behalf of these two ladies that have spent diligent time and dollars and are going to develop a really nice value asset for the community, we respectfully request your denial of this request as it presently stands.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed. With the wishes of the board.
Would it require a continuance vote to have him
yes.
come back in?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I certainly lean in favor of giving him some time to
Mr. Kelly, you come back up, please.
modify.
Yes, sir.
Now, I guess, tell us based on what you've heard, what you would prefer to do.
Well, I hear the gentleman's concerns about a buffer. I know right now there's a 7-foot wall, stacked wall that goes up, and there's a row of planted pine trees that was done by that property owner. So there's a total buffer, and then there's a 5-foot fence that runs the length of the property. And I would be willing to go further than that if necessary, just to address their concern.
I guess my question is, do you want us to make a decision here today, or do you want to continue this?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry?
Do you want us to vote on this today, or do you want to continue it?
The continuance.
And
sure.
For now, and you plan on coming back special use then with a site plan? Is that your?
I don't know the exact. He gave me a proposed allowed uses. Was it? Yeah, if that's what you say.
Well,
I need to read.
We can continue it, and you can make that decision.
Yeah,
but
if you forward it, I'll definitely turn it over to somebody more knowledgeable about this than me.
Whichever he does, we would just apply the difference. We would apply these fees to whatever the fees happen to be with whatever comes in. Okay, and that's probably going. If it's special use, then you're probably going to have a 2-month delay. Okay, you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to continue this?
Okay, I'll make a motion now.
Okay.
That we continue this, night?
Well, whatever.
Whatever time it takes.
Yeah.
2 months?
2 months, 60 days or 2 months.
And with the fees that we discussed,
Yeah,
just
with the
apply
fees added
the
on.
difference. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Younger. Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you.
2 months?
2 months.
Yes.
Well, if he's going to do special use, he's going to take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just get it drawn up by Monday, right?
Yeah.
I'll work on it hard.
Right.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
We're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the board. UDO 271, we have, of course, the petitioner being Planning and Development Services staff. We are requesting the creation of regulations for 2 new uses, microbrewery or microdistillery, and special event center. Some background information. In recent years, the number of breweries, distilleries, and event centers have grown in Winston-Salem. And the microbreweries and microdistilleries are facilities that brew beer or distill alcoholic beverages and often have other complementary services such as a tap room or tasting room and possibly retail. Event centers being those venues that host private functions such as banquets, weddings, parties, and other events. They may have some catering facilities. And in recent years, the reuse of urban structures and use of rural settings have become very popular in this business industry. Currently, our UDO lacks specific use classifications for these businesses, which has made it difficult for inspection staff to classify them. Most breweries and distilleries here in town have been classified as the principal use of restaurant without drive-through, with the breweries or distilleries being considered as the accessory uses. Also, existing event centers have been classified as stadium, coliseum, or exhibition building use, which was originally intended for larger venues such as the LJVM Coliseum. Staff is recommending the creation of 2 new uses, one being microbreweries or microdistilleries and the other special event centers. The microbrewery or microdistillery use, the 2 have been combined given their similar functions. Proposed regulations include a maximum gross floor area of 12,000 square feet, and we would permit the use by right in business, entertainment, mixed use, and industrial districts. They are listed before you here. Also, a tap room or tasting room of at least 10% of gross floor area would be required in business, entertainment, and mixed-use districts to maintain activity. And lastly, for parking calculations, we have 1 parking space required per 100 square feet of the tap room or tasting room, plus 1 parking space per 575 square feet of the brewing or distilling space. Proposed regulations for the special event center include a maximum gross floor area of 20,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet being the threshold between this use and the larger stadium use. The use will be permitted by right in business, entertainment, industrial, campus, and mixed-use districts, which have been listed. Also, we would have 1 parking space required per 225 square feet. In business, campus, and mixed-use districts where the impact on nearby residential needs to be restrained, we have further requirements which include it must have direct vehicular access to a major or minor thoroughfare or collector street, and if a converted existing structure is utilized, there should be no more than 1,500 feet from a thoroughfare or collector street. Setbacks of 40 feet and a type 3 buffer yard for all activity areas, neighboring residential zone property, and activity areas including the structure, the outdoor event space, and parking. Lastly, these requirements for access, setbacks, and buffer yard have also been extended for the larger stadium, coliseum, or exhibition building use, given the similarities between the 2. In summary, we feel that these uses are likely to become even more common in the future, and therefore it is important that we have appropriate classifications and standards for them. And so the proposed use conditions, we feel, will ensure the proper placement of these businesses moving forward and continued preservation of the community character around them. And our staff recommendation is for approval. Are any questions about UDO 271?
Thank you. Yes.
Walter, it said in the staff report that Greensboro was the other only other city that has this use, event centers.
Yes.
And that got me wondering where in Greensboro they allow them. What are the zoning districts that allow that use? Do you happen to know?
I don't have the list with me, but it tends to be in their business, also industrial uses. I know off the top of my head, but I could get that information.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because one of my concerns is about the large lot residential, which would be allowed with the permit from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I looked at the Greensboro chart to see, and all I could find was the residential districts, and it did not allow special event centers in any of the residential districts, including the large lot ones. I just have, my problem with this really is just that this seems like a commercial use. I mean, it is, to me, the closest thing would be a restaurant or a bar to, a special event center, because you're going to have people who are eating and coming, parking, and then leaving. And so it just seems to me like more of a commercial use, and I don't, even in a large lot residential, I see a potential conflict there, and I'm not sure that the permit from the ZBA is necessarily enough of a safeguard to make sure that there aren't conflicts.
Well, we did include the special event center in the large lot and the agricultural just because it has become very popular that people are interested in the rural settings and farm-like for weddings and things of that nature. So we thought it would be important to permit it there, but give the opportunity through the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the neighbors, the opportunity to come to the public hearing and be heard if they felt that the use was not appropriate there.
And let me add in that, of course, Greensboro's would be limited to the municipal limits of Greensboro. And, of course, what we're talking about here is city-county. And when I'm thinking about where we have these zoning districts, with the possible exception of RS-20, which I think we have some in the city limits, and we might have a rare AG in a couple of places. But I think for the most part, those zoning districts, like I say, with the exception of some RS-20, are going to tend to be in the outlying areas within the county jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I can see the reason that people would want to have them in a rural setting. For me, this is kind of similar to the campground issue that we addressed several months ago, also in large lot residential. And just personally, philosophically, I see the potential for conflicts, and I see that as potentially too impactful to those areas. And then the other question I had was about the zoning districts that allow restaurants and bars. Are they the same as the ones that would allow microbreweries, or would there be some difference?
I don't have the list here. But,
just eyeballing it, the only one that comes to mind is I think in the use, the permitted use table cleanup text amendment we brought to you this year. I think we took restaurant out of GI, if I remember correctly. I remember we had some discussion. We did. Yeah. So that would be the one that, off the top of my head, I would think of.
How about NB?
NB allows. NB does allow.
NB. Yeah, NB allows restaurants.
Okay. Thanks.
Can you back your slides up one time? Yeah, let's see. The slide where you were extending these changes to the current stadium uses,
Yes.
Was that right here?
It's at the very bottom.
Okay, these requirements. Now, is that making the regulations for stadium, coliseum, or exhibition buildings tighter?
It is making it tighter.
In what ways? Go over that with me in terms of the issue with parking and buffers and any other
The
elements.
same regulations listed above that bullet point would be extended to the stadium, coliseum, or exhibition building, being that they must have direct vehicular access to major or minor thoroughfare, collector street.
Is there a current regulation on that right now?
Those regulations are not within.
So there's no regulation on that, and now you're saying this should be 1,500 feet.
Well,
Okay.
we're saying it doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to have some logic to have these restrictions for this smaller use of a special event center and not have any for the larger coliseum.
And so what I'm trying to look at is this a change in the regulations for the coliseums, or?
Yes.
I mean, did it previously say 2,000 feet, and now it's 1,500?
There was
nothing in that.
regulations.
What about the setback of 40 feet?
The setback would be new as well.
There was no setback for those stadium, coliseum, or exhibition buildings before?
Well, if you were in a zoning district, if you were in a commercial district against residential, you would automatically have the 40-foot there. I mean, that's just a standard setback across the board.
And then what about the type 3 buffer yard?
Just to back up a minute, Mr. Bryan, just to clarify, the setbacks of 40 feet do exist for residential currently against all residential zoning districts for stadium as well as other commercial uses. What the difference that this provision goes above and beyond that is that it also includes provisions for outdoor area. That's something that we've noticed is a lot of these newer event centers or coliseums, both on the large and the small scale, now have things going on outside, like tables and dining and various things happening. So this actually gives extra protection beyond what would be applied in both the current larger coliseum use and other uses in the ordinance by requiring that 40-foot setback from all those outdoor activity areas.
Okay,
Also,
that makes sense.
the type 3 buffer yard is more intense than what would be required for your standard commercial uses in some cases, but I believe, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, is type 3 what we require if it's single family adjacent to commercial?
It depends on the zoning district. It's really set by that. But yeah, type 3 is probably going to be more intense than what these would require against residential.
But generally, a type 3 buffer yard is fairly intense. It's meant to be an opaque screen, a double row of evergreen trees, and supplemental plantings. So the goal with this was where there's residential adjacent to this use is to really acknowledge the impacts that this use could have and provide some screening and some separation.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Any other questions of staff at this time? This is a public hearing. Does anyone here like to speak in support of this? Anyone like to speak in opposition? Now declare the public hearing closed. Further questions? Any board members? Anyone care to make a motion?
Move approval.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed. Okay. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is UDO, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment number 272. Petitioner is the City Attorney's Office, and the request is an amendment to require the amortization of non-conforming adult establishments in the CB zoning district, central business. Adult establishments are a protected form of freedom of speech, as the United States Constitution defines, but local governments do have the ability to regulate the time, place, and manner of adult establishments. Also, North Carolina statute states that sexually oriented businesses could cause adverse secondary impacts, such as increases in crime rates and decreases in property values on neighboring properties. A little bit of background, adult establishments are allowed in Winston-Salem in the GB General Business District and the GI General Industrial Districts, provided certain spacing requirements are met. In 2003, the UDO was amended to remove adult establishments from the Central Business District zoning category. However, existing establishments within the CB district have been allowed to continue as a non-conforming use, provided that they've not been vacated for more than a year. This request is in response to a recent increase in illegal activity in or around the single adult establishment that we have in downtown at 515 North Cherry Street. And this request would provide an amortization period whereby said existing establishment would cease to operate in a little over 3 years by December 31st, 2019. As we all know, the character, fortunately, has changed a lot downtown. It's been improving with a lot of new investment over the last decade, and really the increase in residential and retail uses and tourism have resulted in a different climate downtown, and the city attorney's office has also received complaints from residents in the vicinity of the said non-conforming adult establishment about noise, illegal activity, and other breaches of the peace. Therefore, due to adverse secondary impacts noted earlier as per the state statutes, said non-conforming adult establishment is no longer compatible with the character of the CB district. And the city attorney's office believes the 3+ year amortization period is sufficient to allow the owner to recoup his or her investment. Therefore, staff's recommendation is for approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions of staff at this time?
And Jerry Contos from the city attorney's office is here, too.
All right. This is a public hearing. Anyone like to speak in support of this? Okay.
Jason Thiel, 305 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Work for the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership as their president, and I wanted to speak in support of the text amendment. We have a lot of people who would have liked to have come here today, but we'll just let my comments stay where they are. I think obviously there's been a lot of discussion about the time and the time constraint being considered. So I think we just wanted to come and show support for the idea of amortization. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me ask you, Mr. Steele, did you all at the Winston-Salem Partnership make a motion on this? I imagine you would have had some discussion, but did you make a motion and say, okay, we would like to exclude it?
Yes, we have talked about this consistently over several years with our board, and it is across the board in support. Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, thanks, sir. Anyone else like to speak in support of this? Anyone like to speak in opposition? I'll declare the public hearing closed. What's the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Dunnigan, second by Mr. Lamb. Any further discussion?
Could I discuss something? This is clearly targeted toward that 515 Cherry Street, and it irks me that we have to come up with a UDO to deal with that. If a property owner is not operating something correctly, we ought to deal with that property owner and get them to either change the way they do it or quit doing it. But it's too bad that we can't deal with this with either civil or criminal statutes and not having to go to an UDO. The other thing about this and is I'm not sure that it's going to solve the ongoing problems. In my discussion with staff, the areas that an adult establishment is allowed in can still have residential use in those same areas or close to it. And I worry about those residents being impacted by this as well. And I know it may be too tricky, and Mr. Contos could probably expound on this, that I think we have 1,000 feet for residential in there. but it's 1,000 feet from residential zoning. It isn't 1,000 feet from residential use. So I imagine that as a city and as a county, we're going to stumble up against this again as we try to put in proximity, people trying to live, growing families up, and adult establishments. And I don't know how to design that, but I'm not sure that this is doing it. I'm in support of it, but I wish it was looking into the future a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, we can only regulate the time that it can be open and the place where the use can be, and that's what we're doing. We're eliminating this permitted use in CB. That's what we're doing in the CB, in the Central Business District, or whatever that's.
And I will say that a number of years ago, these uses were allowed in other zoning districts as well. So we did a text amendment several years ago that eliminated them out of CB, and I believe maybe one or two other districts, to bring them down to just two districts, an industrial district and the GB district. And I understand what I'm sure you're referring to a lot of, we do have a fair amount of GB zoning, and we do have that radius there. I think without getting into too much legalities, without deferring to our legal expertise here, communities have to be careful. As I understand it, they can't totally zone out these uses. They have to have the opportunity for them to locate somewhere. And so that's part of the constraint that has to be followed there. I'm not saying there aren't any other options, but I think that's a very tricky area to kind of deal with in terms of regulations. And it's up to Jerry to determine whether he wants to go any further. But I can say that I do know the city attorney's office has looked at and worked with several options beyond this to try to deal with this specific situation here. So,
but ultimately, you're going to have to allow the use somewhere because it's a legal use. Right. And so ultimately, that's where George is getting at, I think, is what are you going to choose? What are you going to pick to leave it?
When you look at the general statutes, that gives us the tool to use zoning. That's explicitly listed as a way of managing that is by your zoning regulations. So to me, it's appropriate that it falls before us because it's explicit in the general statutes that it can be regulated that way.
Any other comments, discussion? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Paul, you want to introduce
Yes.
Baker?
Okay. Well, we're shifting to a totally different subject now. And what I wanted to do is we're going to be talking about airport some more, Smith Reynolds Airport to be specific, a little later on this fall. But since your comprehensive plan, Legacy 2030, does talk about the importance of Piedmont Triad International Airport as a regional economic hub for our entire region, and since there's been a lot of discussion about the function of PTI as a quote-unquote aerotropolis, and we talk about that in the economic development chapter of Legacy, and since PTI is located just across the county line from us, so it has a lot of influence on both our economic growth and our residential growth because of its proximity. I thought it'd be good before we shift over to Smith Reynolds Airport to kind of get kind of the overview and update of what's going on at Piedmont Triad Airport. So I feel very fortunate that we've been able to get Kevin Baker, the executive director of the PTI, to come to us and give us a little bit of an update. And Kevin has had a lot of experience with PTI as both a consultant before he came on board with the airport, and he's been at the airport for almost 10 years as a staff member, has been director for 6 years. So I'm really pleased that Kevin's been able to spend some time with us today on that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Paul, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for inviting me to come out. And I realize that I'm standing between you and your dinners and your family, and I will respect that and be brief. I will talk for 2 hours with any of you who wants to talk about the airport, and I'm glad to do that at any time. Offer you can come over if you'd like to at any time, but I'm going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes just giving you an update of where we stand with some things, talk to you about our mission, and maybe fill you in on some things you might be wondering about, and then I'll take any kind of questions you'd like to ask. So just in case you don't know how our authority is formed, it's basically a 7-member board that's appointed by the 3 large cities in the Triad, and then Forsyth County and Guilford County. And you can see here the members. I won't go through all of them. They're listed in the order of which they were appointed, so that kind of gives you the longevity of each one of those members. And if you want to talk about any of these in specific, I'd be glad to come back to them. A very important point we like to make whenever we're presenting about the airport is that we do not take any, no taxes are used for the operation of this airport. We run effectively like a business. We're completely self-sufficient from a financial perspective. You can see our 2016 end of fiscal year, which is June 30th data here. We're about a $30 million revenue with expenses just under $14 million, and then we have long-term debt service and interest of about a little over $7 million. So if you do the math there, you see that we're throwing off around $9 million that ends up getting plowed back into the operation of the airport, that we end up renovating space with, maintaining things that needs to be maintained, et cetera. Our mission, back in 2011, we developed a very simple mission, as you can see, and really what we see ourselves existing for is basically 2 pieces. One is to make sure that we provide the best possible passenger experience for anybody who uses our airport. We're not going to be Charlotte. We're not going to be Raleigh. It's a different market, and we get that. We're not going to try. But we are going to make sure that those who will continue to use our airport are going to enjoy that experience and really have the best experience of any airport that they can. And I'll show you some of the things that we're doing to try and enhance that, have done, and are continuing to do. And the other one, maybe even bigger, is promoting economic development. You all know what is happening around the airport and what is happening in our larger Triad community as a result of the airport and some of the companies that are located on the airport. And we're just making sure that we can continue to do that in the future. So this experience we talked about, and we can define this experience. Let me stop here for a second. You can define it, it's sort of a large spectrum, and we have limited control over certain parts of that. We define it as laptop open to wheels up, meaning laptop open the minute you're sitting in your house and you decide to start looking for a flight. And wheels up, obviously, being the moment that your airplane's off the ground and you're on your way to whatever your destination is. We have very little control over the front end part of that, right? We can't control the quantity, the quality, the cost, how people are going to treat you for any of the airlines. We cannot control when they're going to fly, to where they're going to fly, what cities they will serve. But what we can control is the experience, the physical experience you have when you get into the airport. That we can have good signage, safe parking, Wi-Fi that's free and fast, very fast. A good restaurant opportunities, good places to eat, a feel in the terminal that feels nice, doesn't feel harried and rushed, calm, cool, collected, speed. Everything is easy. You see our Fly Easy campaign out there a lot now, I'm sure, and it is. It's very easy. That is our competitive edge against those other 2 airports that I mentioned earlier. So we're going to keep on hammering on all of that. Let me talk about the airlines for just a minute, just to explain to you why we have such little control over that front-end piece. The airlines in the last 10 years have combined. There's been all sorts of consolidation. And also, as a result of 08 and 09, that time frame, they went through a new paradigm in their existence, what they call capacity discipline, and they're still living in it. And what that means is they took the capacity out of the sky. In the airlines world, that means seats. Not necessarily airplanes, but total seats in a market. That's what they sell. In 2007, 2008, 2009, 25% of all seats in the U.S. were taken out of the sky. They're sitting in the desert right now. So what does that mean for markets like us? You take that and then you look at the mergers, And then you look at the mantra that the airlines have, where they're going to serve their hubs and their hubs only. So if you live in a non-hub market, like we do, and you want to fly to another non-hub market, which could be a bigger city or a smaller city. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've lived here for 20 years. Pittsburgh is now a non-hub market. We used to have a U.S. Airways hub, you might all remember, not anymore. So to get from here to Pittsburgh, you need to connect. And that's true with any cities of our size, and even some larger cities like Pittsburgh, like Cincinnati now, like Columbus, Ohio. There's an awful lot of cities that are no longer hub cities. So with that, and with the consolidation of the airlines, let me give you an example. Northwest and Delta merged about now 5 years ago, I suppose. If you look before that merger occurred, the two airlines had hubs in, just coming up sort of the interior East Coast, there was Atlanta, Memphis, Cincinnati, Minneapolis, Detroit. Those were 5 hubs for those two airlines. After the merger, Cincinnati, no longer a hub. Memphis, no longer a hub. Guess where we used to have direct service from this airport and no longer have direct service? Memphis and Cincinnati. So that's how it hurts markets like ours. You see the question here, will a road break ranks? We think that the market is really starting to return. People are starting to fly a lot more. Eventually, to be competitive, they're going to have to add capacity back in, and that's going to open up some opportunities for some of the other carriers. But, you know, at the end of the day, these are businesses. They run as businesses. You see some of these acronyms that I have on the screen, RASM, CASM, PDUs. What those stand for is revenue per air seat mile, cost per air seat mile, and passengers daily each way. The first two are pretty self-explanatory. Passengers daily each way means the number of people in one market who want to go to another market by air. Doesn't matter how they get there. They can fly over Atlanta, over Charlotte, over Dulles, wherever, or they can go direct. But they want to get from one market to another market. The airlines know these numbers better than anybody in the world. They know exactly how many people want to get between separate markets. They also know what kind of revenue they can support in that market. What will people pay to go to those areas? And that's how they make all their decisions about where they put their assets being airplanes, which they have far fewer of now, as I'll show you in just a second. That, I say recognize that airport as a joke, but you might recognize that all those airplanes are sitting in the desert. And those are planes sitting out in the New Mexico desert, parked years and years ago, probably to stay there forever. That is capacity out of the sky. That drives up the price of seats. That limits the amount of aircraft that are flying from market to market. That's what hurts markets like us. There were 4 airlines. When I originally prepared this presentation, there were 4 airlines that we could logically get to serve our market that did not serve our market at the time. And that were these 4: Spirit, Virgin America, Southwest, and JetBlue. Now, today, you may have learned that Virgin was acquired by Alaskan Airways, which will not serve the East Coast in any substantial manner. So now we're down to 3 target airlines that we can be pursuing to try and get extra service into the airport. The bottom 2, Southwest and JetBlue, are already based in both Raleigh and Charlotte, and their capture limits basically overlap where we're sitting right now. So they look at it and say, why should we add another cost center in PTI whenever we can capture those passengers in the other 2? So it's difficult to encourage them to fly here, although we continue to try to do that all the time and make very good cases, especially with one of those 2, which I don't think I'll mention right now, with specific markets that they can serve and do serve. Spirit is another one that we're continuing to pursue and hope to see in our market sometime in the future. But one of the facts that we have to face is that the average household income in our market is lower than a lot of competing cities in the southeast. Down the left-hand side, you see a lot of other airports that are southeastern airports. And our area, within 45 minutes of our airport, falls near the bottom, in fact, at the bottom on this slide. There's the newest data, I think, moves us up 1 over top of GSP, which is Greenville-Spartanburg. But still, the airlines know that as well, and it's difficult. It's a difficult uphill battle for us. So what can we control? That feel. When you're in the building. This is a picture of the United ticket counter about 2 years ago now, and it looks pretty sparse. It looks like an old train station from about 30 years ago. That's it last week. And you see the difference if I go back and forth just a couple times. Obviously, it's taken from a slightly different angle. In this picture, the United ticket counter is on the back right-hand side, and here it's obviously in the foreground on the left. But the feel of the terminal, the amenities that are available to the passengers just greatly improved over the last couple of years. moving past the passenger experience piece, and I could talk for 2 hours about just the passenger experience, all the things that we've done at the terminal. Be glad to go through that with anybody who'd like to, but in the interest of time, the other half of the mission, the economic development piece, just unbelievable is how I would describe it. What you see right there is Honda's first production flight celebration. At that time, they had 700 employees. This is 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. That's 700 people represented on that ramp right there, each one of them with an average salary of $75,000. Do that math and think about that in our community. And by the way, about 20% of all of the airport's employees, there's 5,000 of them total on the airport, 20% of them live in Forsyth County. Half of those also live in Winston-Salem. So these are real numbers for this side of the triad. Now Honda is at 1,900 and still counting. So I mentioned 5,000 people working at the airport. And this is a really important fact, both for our airport and for Smith Reynolds and for the rest of the airport system in this state. Look at the math that you see here. I have 5,000 people. The average salary on the whole airport, now Honda was a little bit higher, okay, but the average salary for the whole airport is between $60,000 and $65,000. If you just do the raw math then, 5,000 people times the low side of 60,000, that's $300 million in direct salaries alone, just from the people who work on the airport. Not those who are accountants, engineers, lawyers who work for the airport or as a result of the airport being there. The state payroll tax on that at 6.8% is a little over $20 million. In 2014, the state of North Carolina's investment in all 72 airports in the state was $19 million. So said a different way, the state's third largest airport in terms of passengers completely supported the state's investment in the state airport system. Airports are huge net donors. All of them are huge net donors. Now, I shouldn't say all of them. When you get down to very, very tiny airports, it could be that they're not exactly making a lot of investment to the state. But airports like Smith Reynolds, airports like ours, and certainly airports like Charlotte, Raleigh, Wilmington, Asheville are huge net donors to our state system, and it's a place where the state should be investing its money, and is. They're being very, very gracious to us. Our whole plan has been to be ready to say yes. A number of years ago, I put this slide in just today for you all because this is a planning slide. And Ted Johnson, my predecessor, who was at the airport for 43 years, and I were in Reagan National Airport and waiting for a flight. And this was during the days of Honda getting wrapped up, the first phase of Honda. It's about 2007. And he looked at me and said, what are we going to do after Honda? We don't have any more space. We're running out of space. And this is a drawing that we set there in that airport and sketched that day. And what you see in these blue lines with the little squigglies on the right-hand side, that's a taxiway and a bridge. You probably heard about our bridge over Interstate 73. First time it was ever drawn on a piece of paper. Really underscores the need for planning. I was looking at your mission back here and talking about visionary planning. It's so important, and it's really, we think it's so important at an airport as well because you've got to look so far down the road. You've got to be planning 40, 50 years down the road to make sure that you don't miss something. In 2011, that's what the airport property looked like. It's sort of the area that does not have the yellow highlighting. We sat in a room with a bunch of planners and engineers and economic development folks, and we said, what might happen? What demand might come along that we better be ready for and would be ready to say yes? And we drew this drawing up with all these green spots, and what those basically are expansions of existing tenants that we thought could likely occur, or, especially in the case of this big green blob with all the buildings that you see on the northern side of the drawing, some new companies that might come in. And obviously at that time, and even still today, we can't predict exactly what those buildings would be, what they would look like, what the layouts have to be, but it's just a matter of planning for a big space to be available. So that was sort of the overall drawing that we came up with. And then we asked ourselves this question: how do we get from there, where we were, to there? And came up with another one. And I'm not going to go through all these individual projects, but what you see in colors on that sheet are what we call enabling projects. There's 12 or 13 of them up there, I think. Each one of them is necessary to open up some of that space and to make sure that when a company comes along and says, we need 100 acres, it's got to be next to a taxiway, it's got to be next to an interstate, we need all the utilities to the site, we don't want any environmental issues, we want it next week, and we want it for free. You've heard that before. I know you have. When they come and they say that, we can say, we can do that. We can name that tune. Otherwise, if you don't, off they go to some other city that's one of our competitors. And that, to me, it used to keep me awake at night. Now we're in such a good position because we're halfway through. This was a 10-year plan that we had outlined, and we started in 2012. We're past halfway in just about 4 years. A couple of quick aerials. You can see in this image the kind of brown earth in the middle there is the Interstate 73 alignment as it cuts through the airport. Runway, our northern runway is to the right-hand side, barely on the screen there. This shows how our taxiway will come out and open up all of this land that I'm talking about. Over 1,000 acres that could be available. That could be 7 Hondas. That could be a couple of FedExes. It could be a Boeing or two. You all remember we were in competition for the Boeing site. That was 430 acres, 8,000 employees. Another view of it looking back towards the airport. Just to give you a little bit of thud factor, look how big that shape is compared to the airport property as it exists today. Now, of course, it's in the foreground, which accentuates it. I didn't do that on purpose, but it does make it look bigger. And the last slide, this is our taxiway bridge under construction. Again, North Carolina DOT has been a huge partner for us to help us make sure that we can plan for the future, implement these things that we need to do to be ready for future projects. I lied, there's one more slide in there. This is the HACO hangar. You've probably heard of the new HACO hangar that is under construction. It would be a just state-of-the-art hangar for huge airplanes, so HACO can continue to do what they do on our airport, have been doing it for 30 years, ties directly back to Smith Reynolds again with NS Aviation. We have such a bench strength in the triad of that kind of employee that it doesn't exist in more than probably 20 cities in the U.S. So we've got a lot to sell in this region, not just this airport, but Smith Reynolds, and really even over to Burlington where they're making the Honda engines. So with that, I will take any questions that you all have, and before I go to there, I would again invite any of you who would like to come out to the airport, please do. I'd be happy to show you around, talk to you in greater detail.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions, anyone? Great presentation. We appreciate what you're doing. And
thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Paul, I guess staff report.
All right. Well, first thing I want to do is I would like it if everybody could train their eyes on Desmond Corley right now, because I have the very sad duty of telling you that Desmond is taking the next step in his professional career, and unfortunately it is not here. He's accepted a planning position with the town of Cary, so he'll be moving closer to a certain alma mater of his, NC State University, but will be joining the ranks of planners over in that area, and we are going to miss Desmond terribly. He has worked with us both in planning, on the planning side, as well as in the inspection side with zoning plans review, and he's done an excellent job, and we're going to miss him, but we wish him the best and congratulate him on taking this next step in his career.
Very good.
Congratulations. We're going to miss you.
His last day with us will be September 23rd. So, anyway. The just upcoming attractions, our deadline date for the next round of zoning cases is this Monday. And we potentially might have a pretty heavy caseload. We could have as many as 9 or more zoning cases being filed. So just to give you a heads up on that we'll probably have a longer than normal meeting there, or longer than recent meeting there. We've got our statewide planning conference coming up next week. Actually, it's in Asheville, and just to let you know, it looks like in 2 years it'll be back here in Winston-Salem. And they had such a good experience here that I think we've been put on the accelerated rotation list here. And last conference was in 2013, so just think about all the things that have happened here since 2013. There's going to be a lot of different things for them to see even then. Work session in 2 weeks. We are expecting to have Mark Davidson with Smith Reynolds Airport here, so he'll give us a presentation about what's going on at Smith Reynolds, and then we'll also give you a little preview of what we've been studying in terms of the need to update our own airport overlay that relates to Smith Reynolds Airport. So that's something that we'll discuss with you on the heels of that. We'll probably have some discussion about the Winston overlay tweaks that we've been talking about with the downtown partnership, and we got a couple other works in progress. So that's how work session is kind of shaping up. And the last thing I'll mention is I think you got in your packets the finished up and hopefully prettied up annual report, and you see on the back, very nice picture of you all that we put on there. So thought that turned out so good we had to put it in here. So anyway, but that's the annual report, and that'll be what's given to the elected bodies when they have their resolution for you next month. So that is it for staff report.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Board members, anything for the good of the order?
No, I just want to, I know summer's officially over, but we got a few blessed days of 90-degree weather, so enjoy the rest of the summer we're going to have here for the next week or so. And motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.